Welcome to Power CEOs, the truth behind the business. I'm Jen Gaudet, your fearless host, entrepreneur, investor, and business strategist. Why are we here? Because iron sharpens iron. And when we bring successful entrepreneurs, investors, and executives to share what's working in business and maybe a little bit of what's not, we are all able to learn and grow. As a result, our businesses grow, and the ripple effect impacts not only ourselves, our teams, and our families, but also our communities and our world. Today, you're in for a treat. We are going to be bridging the brain trust gap, talking about supply chain leadership and so much more. Supply chain has been in the news a whole lot lately, and the industry is kind of at a turning point. While we're seeing incredible innovation, we're also witnessing a massive leadership shift. Seasoned experts are retiring, and the new workforce is stepping in with a little bit less experience. And so in order to start talking about how this is going to bridge the gap, I am joined today by supply chain transformation expert Art Koch to discuss how businesses can bridge the gap in brain trust and ensure the next generation of supply chain leaders is set for success. Welcome to the show, Art.
Thank you. It's wonderful to talk to you this afternoon, Jen.
Art, you have been in the supply chain industry for decades. You've worked with some of the biggest logo companies. What are you seeing right now in terms of leadership transition and that kind of loss of knowledge or brain trust in the industry?
What we're seeing is so many of the baby boomers are now retiring, and there's a vacuum or a void in knowledge within supply chain with the new group of tactical people and moving into management and director roles that they don't have all the background that they might have had where they had a good mentorship 10, 15, 20 years ago.
So talk to me about this a little bit more. How big of an issue is this for companies? What could be the long-term risk if this gap isn't addressed?
Well, I think it's a huge problem. The reason why I see it being a huge has always been complicated. But what's happened over the past 10, 10, 15, 20 years, and with the advent of what we went through with COVID and now tariffs, it's even more critical for you to get your supply chain right. And what we've seen in universities have been catering to analytics, big models, diving into analytics, and they're not necessarily teaching all the practical or the application aspect once you get into supply chain. So you have a bunch of really smart young men and women that are entering the workforce that have case studies and understand analytics, but they might not understand how to use the tools behind the scenes to get the outcome that they need.
Well, we see this in every industry, right? I come from healthcare and we go to medical school and we get all of this theoretical knowledge. And then you get out in the workforce and you think you know all the things because you've got that tremendous base of knowledge. And then, of course, we have internships and residencies and whatnot. But when we get out there, less than 2% is a textbook case. So how do we address that, or how can companies address that from a leadership standpoint so that these youth who have incredible intelligence and the case study and book smart can bridge that gap? What can they start to do or start to think about so that they can sort of fill that void?
You have to have a transfer of knowledge. You have to get away from the tribal knowledge and get it all documented. In organizations, it's extremely difficult to get everything documented because there's so many exceptions to what happens. So you want to at least get the top level documented as much as you can, in the mid level of the problems documented, and get to where the individuals can know where to go look to try to solve the problem. The next thing that I really advocate is organizations to use fractional team members. There's a lot of individuals that are retiring, and they might get out of work for a year, then start to get bored. Well, bring them back in for 10, 15, 20 hours a week in a fractional role and use them as mentors and training and filling in the gaps. I don't think we do enough of that, and we need to do more of that. And I really think that's the key thing. Another element, I always try to talk about things in threes. The third element is I really focus organizations on visual daily management, where you're spending today working on what needs to be solved in today's 8 hours to make the next 24, 48, 72 hours successful. I always implement and push and advocate that being done. So if you nail it, if you go after organizations, making sure they have standard work, use video tools to train and develop and transfer the knowledge of the tribal system, uh, get fractional knowledge in, fractional leadership, and put visual daily management in. I think you'll be a step far ahead.
I'd love to dive a little bit deeper into that because this is your area of extreme expertise. And so let's start with the brain trust documentation, because the culture, and this is not just in supply chain, this is in a lot of industries. Some of the subject matter experts, the people with the experience, feel like if I share this knowledge, I will no longer be necessary. And as such, my job will be at risk. How do we shift the mindset and shift it more towards mentorship and sharing this knowledge a little bit earlier, much earlier, prior to thinking about retiring? How do we do that? How, as leaders, do we approach that particular mindset problem in our subject matter experts?
You have to get to where you're shifting the mindset and behavior of not just individuals, but the organization. You have to build a organization where it's inclusion, where all of the people in the organization are relied upon on their individual strengths, and you know how to play to those strengths. You understand their weaknesses and you know how to play to their weaknesses, and you create a culture of where people thrive. And when a mistake occurs, you don't kill the messenger on it, or you don't kill the individual that made the mistake. You use it as a learning tool. And that has to come early on. And not every organization does the best job at it, and especially when time is stress, when it's a stressful situation, because people revert to they change their behaviors when it's stressful very often.
Yeah, and so once we change that culture, and we're really emphasizing utilizing and playing to all the strengths of the team, no matter what stage in career we are at. What does it look like as we start to consider bringing in some of these fractional employees on as kind of, it's almost like bringing them back in as consultants once they retire? So what needs to change strategically on the executive side? So speak to me on that. And then how do we message that as we move forth, if we're changing that within our own organization?
Well, if you build an organization where people's voices are heard and they're being valued, to get people to come back 10, 15, 20 hours a week or a month, it will be much easier. But if you have an organization that it's not that way, people are going to leave and they're not going to want to come back. Okay. So that's a telltale sign of how healthy your organization is. And if you're not doing that, you have to start working with the new group on figuring out how to do it. Talk to the individuals that are key stakeholders that are leaving and work to get them back in. One of the biggest things I see in transforming an organization is doing daily stand-ups on what are the hot topics, the visual daily management that I was talking about. What are the key points that have to be done today to make the future successful? And when you're working through that, you have to make sure middle, senior, and executive management is not pushing the problem down. They're hearing what the problem is, what individuals are fighting through, and they're helping them solve it. And as they help the team solve problems, what happens is you start to invert the organization. Instead of it like this, where the top is the power brokers, you flip it up and you get the power brokers, the people doing the work, at the top of the pyramid. And then that's when you start to solve so many problems that will make you more successful.
I couldn't agree more. And so talk to me about let's talk to the young professionals that are watching this. For younger professionals who are entering the supply chain industry today, what are some of the skill sets that they should focus on developing early on to accelerate their expertise? And how do they advocate for themselves so that they can get the mentorship that they need in order to be successful?
First and foremost is critical thinking. You have to be excellent in critical thinking. Dovetailed right into that, you have to be a good listener. Not only, it's making sure that what you say is heard properly, okay? And then the message that's being given to you, that you've heard all the nuance and context associated with that. So often you have all of us, yeah, okay, gotcha. And you get back to your desk and you go, oh, crap, exactly what they needed. I missed it. So we all have to do better at that. But I'll tell you, critical thinking, listening skills, and then learning the fundamentals of what goes on within supply chain. So much of supply chain programs, absolutely in MBA programs, they're pushed analytics. And that's great. However, how does an MRP work? How does lead time work? What's the difference between supply variability and demand variability, et cetera, et cetera? How do you work with suppliers and develop partnerships? So on and so forth. Understanding uh, how the fundamentals work and knowledge within that area is absolutely critical. Those are the three things that I tell young graduates to work on.
Thank you so much. So I'm just going to briefly recap because we do have to break for commercial, but it's essential no matter what industry you're in. We're talking about supply chain right now, but this applies to every industry. If you're listening, if you're watching, then make sure that you are passing on your brain trust, capturing the insights, the expertise of our seasoned employees, and making sure we have that in a way that we can use mentorship and those written insights, that brain trust, and educate the younger professionals that are in our organization. And if you're one of the younger part of the generation, active listening is key. Listening and making sure that you understand, paraphrasing, reciting that back to your mentors, so incredibly important so that we can skip some of the mistakes that are made. We can make sure that we're learning in an effectual manner the practical application of our theoretical knowledge. So we are set for success. Our businesses are set for success. We will be right back after these messages to dive deep into this topic. See you in a minute.